Macro Detectors is the fastest growing manufacturer in the industry, and for good reason. Many detectorists, including Mike Haer, call us the most innovative, but we are so much more than that. We listen to and care about our customers. We also offer a wide range of detectors to fit all of your needs. Come check out all of our products today at www.noctadetectors.com. Detectors for everyone, everywhere, a lifetime.
Welcome to the All Metal Mode podcast with your host, Michael Haer. Tune in every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern with co-host Gypsy Jules, and every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Matt Hoffman as we talk to guests, discuss metal detectors, equipment, and everything treasure related. Feel free to join in the discussion in the chat room during the show, and please, if you like what you hear, we'd appreciate you taking a moment to hit that like button and share the link with your friends. We hope you enjoy the show. The All Metal Mode podcast starts right now.
Good evening, everybody. This is Mike Haer, and you're listening to the All Metal Mode podcast with my very special co-host, Mr. Dorian Cook. Excited to start the show with him. I hope you all enjoyed the show last night with Gypsy and Matt. I tuned in pretty much and was there for most of it, so I thought things went really good. I thought Matt did good for his first time behind the wheel. So let's see. Don't forget you can find us on Facebook at All Metal Mode as well as All Metal Mode Podcast UK. All Metal Mode is every Monday and Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and All Metal Mode UK is every Thursday at 8 p.m. GMT time, or that's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thursday on the All Metal Mode UK podcast, we will have Mike Smith on, who found the Chariot over in England. That was a huge find. I think it was this last fall. We've had him on before, but this time he can talk. He's not under contract. He can talk. I don't know. I don't think that's the right wording. It's not a contract. Legally, he could only say so much. Now he can say whatever he wants. Dirt Digest magazine, the July issue is now available. It's free online. It's a free online magazine for metal detectors, dirtdigestmagazine.com. Keep in mind, we're looking for articles. You don't have to be a writer. You can reach out to me if you need help, and we'll even help you for a good article. We're also looking for good finds made to put in the magazine each month. You can go on the website, and there's a place, I think it's called the Treasure Room, and you can submit your find along with a brief explanation and stuff, and we'll get it in the magazine every month. Please help spread the word about the All Metal Mode podcast. We would appreciate it if you enjoy the show. Hit the like button, tell a friend about it, whatever you got, whatever you can give us. Don't forget the giveaway. It's still going on until next Monday. And if you'd like to be entered, I don't know what is going on in here, but something is rattling. I don't know what's causing it. I don't know where it's at, but it's driving me crazy, and it just started. But it's a Predator Tools spike shovel. We're giving it away next Monday on the show. We're going to draw out of the Facebook group Dirt Digest Magazine. You need to go there, and to enter, you go there. It's at the top. It's a pinned topic. Make sure nobody else has picked the number that you choose, and put your number in, and you're entered it to be in the drawing for next week. And it'll be announced on air live next Monday, and also we'll post it in the group. Yeah. So we'll do a live random number generator. Something I'm going to talk about real quick before we get going here. I gotta track down this noise. It is driving me crazy. And I don't know what it is. Anyhow, Jiminy Christmas. Dorian doesn't know I was going to bring this up. He's not part of this. I'm not speaking for him. I'm only speaking for myself. And it's happened a couple times is why I'm bringing it up. On Facebook, I will add anybody that's into metal detecting. For the most part, hear me out. I'm there for family and metal detecting stuff. That's all I do. So, and I'll add anybody. But if I go on your Facebook and I can't even find anything on metal detecting and it's all political rants and stuff, I'm not going to add you. And it's nothing personal. It's not about your beliefs. We're not talking politics and what side it's coming from. I just don't want to see it. And, I've learned my lesson on that. All of a sudden, you get somebody who wants to add you and they've got a pair of headphones on their, they're wearing a pair of headphones in their profile picture and I don't look and I add them. And next thing I know, my feed is bombarded by their political stuff. And I don't care if you post now and then, whatever. But when you post 10 times a day and it's political stuff, I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. The reason I bring this up, this is the second time this has happened. I've had somebody really get angry at me over it. And I'm like, look, I listened to the podcast. I can't believe you didn't add me. I added you on, why didn't you add me? And, when I told this person, I said, look, I didn't even know you were into metal detecting, but I don't want to read your political rants all day long. And to say it didn't go too well is an understatement. And, I don't want to get into politics. It does, I do have my own beliefs and stuff, but I don't want to see any of it. I'm not there on Facebook for political rants. That's not my thing. So, and it's nothing personal. Hey, you have the right to do that and you do you. But if I don't add you and you're full of political rants, that's why. Even if it's not political and I can't tell you're a detectorist because you never post anything even remotely, I'm probably not going to add you, and it's nothing personal. I'm here for metal detecting stuff, but especially the political rants, not into it. Just not into it. Okay, there's my rant over with. How you doing tonight, Dorian?
Hey, doing good, Mike. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. I apologize for that little rant, Dorian. It's something it's popped up a few times now. And
well, let me just take the opportunity to say, to echo your sentiments. That's the same thing. We have no room for politics on our group page on We Dig the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't respect some. I read a lot of the comments on their own page, and on their own page, they have every right to rant all they want. I ran occasionally on my homepage. But once, it's just like, we have a neighbor who has a teenager who has a penchant for, what we call noise machines, that is 2-wheel bikes that have no muffler. And we live in a narrow mountain valley. And when he cranks those things up, it's a crescendo of noise that echoes for over 2 miles down the valley. And, I feel like it's his right to have that kind of noise or listen to it ends at my ears, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And they need to go somewhere where there's a special track that's not right in a residential area to play with their noise machines, things like that. And so it's the same thing. It's anybody that wants to know my views on what I wish to share can go on my homepage, and they can like it or not like it. That's certainly their choice. But when we get into the groups, I agree with you. The politics.
I'm not talking about the groups, Dorian. I'm talking about people wanting to add me as on their friends list, and they've got, they post 5 posts a day and it's all political rants. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be friends with them. I don't mean it personal. I'm just tired of it. I'll be real honest with you. I am tired of the liberal agenda getting shoved down my throat. I can't get on social media without it being shoved down my throat. I get on my homepage, whether it's Bing or Google or whatever, there's liberal news waiting there for you. I'll just say it how it is. But if you're heavily right leaning and every post is liberal, or if you're right and it's all right leaning, I don't want to see it all day long. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. I'm absolutely just fed up. Okay, let's move past politics. It doesn't belong on this show. We have a really interesting show for you, and I'm hoping, I'll be honest with you, I'm hoping as Dorian gets going here, I only have 2 quick things to add to this, but I love it, and Dorian has several, and I know it will jog my memory, but as we talked about, I'm like, Dorian, I just can't think of anything really good to add to this, but the Treasure Hunter's Twilight Zone, and weird things that have happened, and all that kind of stuff while you're detecting, and we're not talking paranormal for the most part, right? Just different weird things that have happened.
Yeah, we're not talking about seeing ghosts. Although I do have a Bigfoot story I would like to include in this evening. So, my one personal experience, and then I want to share the experience of the gentleman that I was staying with as I was doing some Civil War relic hunting in Arkansas, because I came home after my experience and asked him about if he had any, and he was very reluctant, but he finally told me. Well, and I think it's worth sharing. Mm-hmm. So that'll be coming up. We'll kind of save that towards the end of the show, and you let me know when you're ready to get started.
Oh, go ahead. Let's go.
Okay. All right. I would like all of you who are listening who, are coin hunters and who really, really enjoy digging silver coins. I want you to think about putting yourself in my place in this story. I don't want to cover things that are just unusual. We all make unusual finds from time to time. We all have unusual experiences. But I want to talk about experiences that come along every so often that are really over the top, that defy all logic, all normal time and chance, law of averages type stuff, to the point it's so extreme that, you can't conclude positively that there's some kind of interference from somewhere else in your life, but you're wondering. And I'd like to begin by sharing the experience of my journey through 2 years of the Treasure Hunter's Twilight Zone. Mm-hmm. I live in north central Kentucky, and I'm not far from the Ohio River. And I have permissions on over 5,000 acres of bean fields that have many, many, not only individual 1700s house and cabin sites, but actually at least one 1700s ghost town site and an 1860s ghost town site. So, I have a lot of sites when the beans are in the field that we have worked. I've been working for the past 10 to 11 years. And I found all the kinds of things that you would expect to find in those sites. All the examples about all the coins, everything from cut Spanish silver to little 3-cent silver pieces, seated dimes, seated half dimes, seated quarters, barber stuff. And then some of the houses that actually existed into the 1940s or 50s will even find newer silver. So, if you had such a site, wouldn't you count on finding silver on a fairly regular basis? What do you think, Mike?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, you think that, man, if I keep hitting these sites, I've got, in these permissions, I've got something like probably close to 100 house sites dating from the 1860s to the 1760s.
Mm-hmm.
So if I work those and consider that when I began to work these, I already had 41 years experience in metal detecting.
Okay.
So I know my equipment. I already recovered over 170,000 coins, and I'm not a coin hunter. I'm more of a treasure relic hunter. But I have found over 170,000 coins before I even got these permissions and began to hunt. So up until that time, through those 41 years, I would have to say that my silver finds on old house sites were probably comparable to yours or a lot of your listeners. And, you expect. You don't expect necessarily to find silver every time you go out.
Right.
But what if, let's say you and your hunting buddy went out on a good site, and you hunted most of the day, and both of you found, say, half a dozen coins. But your coins are things like large cents, shield nickels, coins that are definitely non-silver.
Right.
And so you got a half a dozen of these nice 1800s coins, but your buddy's got a half a dozen coins that 3 of them are silver. Well, okay, every dog has his day, right?
Right.
So you're thinking next time. So you go back next time, a week or so later, and the same thing happens all over again. And you think, wow, this could get old, if it were to go on, but that's okay. Sometimes you have a streak of bad luck or whatever you want to call it. And so you go out again, and again, and again, and again. And the same thing happens every time. You find coins, you find them at comparable depths to your buddy, but he finds silver every time, and you get no silver, not even a silver thimble or a little silver ring, not a piece of silver. Well, that would be pretty bad if it went on for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 trips out. It'd get pretty old after about 10 trips, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Well, what if this phenomena, if you want to call it that, went on for 2 full years? After 41 years in which I found silver, and I found, a fair amount of silver every single year that I metal detected, suddenly I find myself in the treasure hunter's twilight zone. And I couldn't dig I don't think I could have found a piece of silver in a coin shop.
Right.
It was so bad, And if my buddy had also been experiencing this, my hunting buddy, maybe it wouldn't have been so distressing.
Yeah.
But he's just going along as normal, getting the normal amount of silver versus the other coins, while I am absolutely skunked on every trip for 2 full years.
What do you think happened?
Believe me, I couldn't even count the hours I spent pondering this and trying to figure out, thinking, okay, all right, it's been a long dry spell, but next time, next time.
You're right.
Well, next time finally did come, but it was 2 full years. And then I apparently walked out of one region of the twilight zone and into another one. Because when I found my first coin, I went back to a site that had been productive, a 1700s house site, had been productive for years. Always came out with a few coins and a piece or 2 of silver. But I hadn't, in the 6, 8, 10 times I hunted it during those 2 years, I didn't get a single piece of silver. So finally I go back to that site. I'm by myself. and I get a piece of cut Spanish silver, a quarter of a Spanish dollar. Oh, man. I think that's the sweetest coin I ever dug. You know, it wasn't about the value. It was about the fact it was silver. The drought had been broken, at least for today, for that day, right? Well, This is where it got strange again. The next 10 trips, every time I went to a site, and believe me, these sites were, some of them 40, 50 miles apart. A variety of different sites where you would hunt for coins and artifacts, relics. Every single time, once I found that piece of cut Spanish silver, I went out for 10 trips in a row. I found a piece of silver that dated back into the 18 or the 1700s. I would find a silver coin in either the 1800s or the 1700s. And finally, on the 12th trip, I broke that pattern by finding a George Washington silver quarter. But how can you go 2 years and hunt dozens of sites and not find one single piece of silver, and yet you're pulling large cents, like I said, shield nickels, 3-cent nickels, stuff like that. You know, Indian head pennies, you're getting those out 8-10 inches in the ground. And then suddenly, oh, and by the way, I had never been able to find a seated quarter. It was on my bucket list. The next time I went out after that first silver coin, I got a seated quarter.
Oh, no.
And the next time I went out, I got my second seated quarter.
That's too funny.
Went 41 years without finding one, and then dug 2 consecutive in sites that were 30 miles apart.
Bill wants to know if you were using the same detector for those 2 years.
Absolutely. I was using a Fisher 1266X. I had literally thousands of hours on that machine. It was very good to me. Found thousands of Civil War artifacts with it and hundreds of coins.
Were you using the same detector when you found those, when you got that streak of finding silver, what was it, 12 days in a row, 12 times out in a row?
I was using the exact same detector.
Huh. That is odd. So you just have no clue why? No theories, no...
I would love to hear any theories or comments from your audience. I really would. If anybody can enlighten me, I would love to know, because that was one of the greatest personal metal detecting mysteries of my, now 48 years of detecting.
I can't say I have anything. I don't know. That's odd to me.
If anyone listening has experienced anything like it, we'd love to have a comment from you.
Yeah, I think that's just really odd, hunting with the same person. They're finding it's not like you just weren't getting your coil over it or hitting the right spots because your friend was finding them. That's odd. That's really odd.
Yeah, now he was hunting with a mine lab, and I actually took to actually ask him to let me hear his signals before he dug them, so that I could see if there was a problem with depth or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't. I could hear everything that he found on my detector. So it wasn't the detectors, that wasn't the problem at all. But like I said, after 41 years of being used to finding silver on a fairly regular basis, it messes with your mind when you go 2 years without digging any.
Yeah. That's beyond odd.
Yeah, and I got another silver coin story too that I want to bring out tonight, about this. And I'm sure some of the listeners have had experiences that defy, like I said, the law of averages and time and chance. And we'd love to know what your experiences were, because we were jokingly calling this the Treasure Hunter's Twilight Zone, because we don't really have a hard, fast explanation for this kind of thing. But anyway, I would like to move on to another shorter story.
Hold on real quick, Dorian. I want to
Sure.
say, if you're listening tonight and you want to call in, the number is 682-459-2977 and tell us your story. If not, join us in chat. The chat's going live right now while we're live on air, and you can post your story in there, and we'll talk about it on the show. Either way. So feel free to call in tonight as we're doing this, or again, jump in chat and tell us your story. If you need help getting in chat, wherever, when you started the show, a bar came up with the pause and play button and everything on it. Look for the little bubble, and you can jump right into chat. Just click on that bubble. Go ahead, Dorian. You can jump into your next story.
Yeah, this one was it's a much simpler story. It's just a 24-hour period that two things happened that just really defy the imagination. I was relic hunting, Civil War relic hunting, the battlefield at Mansfield, Louisiana. And it was a battlefield that I was well familiar with. I found hundreds of artifacts there. And on this particular day, I dug half of a completely iron spur. Most spurs you dig on Civil War sites are brass. This was not. It was an iron spur, and it looked more almost like a Western spur, like you see in some of the Western movies. It had two big wide bands down the sides of the boot, and then, of course, the what's the term for the part that sticks out of the back of the spur and holds the little wheel called a rowel that they kind of bump the horse's sides with.
Okay.
Can't remember the name of that little piece that comes out. But anyway, this spur had broken right at where that piece was attached at the back. So the piece was still on the part of the spur that I found. So I have half a spur, a little more than half a spur if you count the rowel and the little arm that sticks out the back. So, okay, it's an interesting find. But let me ask you something. What do you think the odds would be of finding the second half of that spur close by? Pretty good?
How close are we talking here?
Let's say within a 100-foot, 200-foot circle.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
The spur might have broken. It was right near the battle lines. There could have been a cavalry charge going on or something. Anyway, this would have been a Confederate spur because I never saw any like this that were issued or used by the Union Army. But anyway, I thought, okay, it'll make a nice little, the iron was still in fairly good condition. I thought it'd make a nice little addition to my display. And I did look for the other half. And I did not find it. I figured some other relic hunter had come along and gotten it. So I finished up the hunt that day at Mansfield, and there was a sister battle site 23 miles down the road called Pleasant Hill. The Battle of Mansfield was fought on one day. The Battle of Pleasant Hill was fought the second day, and they were both very large battles, a lot of casualties, this type of thing. And we're getting a thunderstorm rolling in here, so if you hear something in the background, that's thunder, I guess.
Oh, wow, I do hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, we were not supposed to have that this evening, but we got it. So, we'll continue bravely on here. All right, so imagine now I'm going to drive the next morning 23 miles, and I'm going to hunt on the Pleasant Hill battlefield. What would you say the odds are that I would go to that battlefield and find the second half of that spur?
Slim and none?
Slim to none. Yeah, 23 miles apart, and you've got a battlefield, both battlefields covering hundreds of acres.
Not very likely.
I mean, the logical conclusion is that somebody else had already dug it at Mansfield, right?
Right.
Okay, so I drive to Pleasant Hill, and I thought, I'm going to get way, way over here there's a lot of woods, timber company land. They didn't care if we hunted it. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get way, way over here on the Confederate right flank and see if I can find any, hot spots that haven't been already hunted or worked. So I find a couple of dirt roads that take me way out on the, what was the Confederate right flank. And I park my car and I walk into these dense woods. And I start swinging my detector. And I suppose I've been swinging about 2 minutes and I get a really nice signal. I checked it on Discriminate. It says it's an iron object. Okay, could be a piece of an artillery shell or something. It's fairly big. So I enthusiastically dig my first signal 2 minutes into the hunt. And guess what I dug up? I dug up the other half of that spur.
Right. Yeah, that's, as you're telling the story to me now, I'm wondering if in my head, that was probably limited, an iron spur, but I'm wondering if there was a group of men that had those and they were real prone to break at the same point.
I would say that's a good speculation. I think that's very possible, but I'll tell you this was like jigsaw puzzle. The two pieces, the break was not straight. It was ragged, and the two pieces fit exactly.
So probably did belong together.
Yeah, I have no doubt that was the other half of that spur. Mm. But the point is, what were the odds of anyone doing that? I mean, you'd have better odds of winning the Mega Millions lottery.
For sure. That is an odd one. That is odd. No explanation.
Yeah, so there's certain things that happen in the course of your adventures. When you do a lifetime of hunting, you have many normal hunts. You have many hunts where you come back empty-handed. You have hunts where you come back with almost too much to carry. I mean, I've been all over the spectrum, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak. But that was for something that defies the imagination. Digging the other half of that spur within 2 minutes on a totally different battlefield, it was unbelievable.
That is unimaginable. But then you almost have to wonder if you were meant to find those. If there's for some reason you were meant to find that, or you were drawn to that for some reason. I don't know. I think that's really, really odd. Dorian, I got one for you, and I wonder if you've ever experienced this. I thought I was the only one, but I know it's happened to a lot of people. Have you ever pulled up to a site and get your detector out and you're swinging for a minute or two and you get a nice signal and you dig up a great find and it just energizes you and you're all excited, and then 4 hours later, 6 hours later, you walk out there and you didn't find anything else?
Oh, man.
Or nothing of any, of course you got a pocket full of trash and stuff, but nothing else good popped up. And that very first signal in the very first few minutes, you dug something great. It energized you. Oh, this is going to be a good place. And then nothing.
Mike, yes. And that has happened. If I had to estimate, I've had that happen dozens of times. I walked into what I thought was going to be really hunter's heaven. It was a place called Duval's Bluff in Arkansas. And it sits way, way up above, let's see, is it the White River or the Arkansas River? I forget now. Well, one of those. And you're looking way down on the river. And there's these beautiful trenches still there that were dug by the Confederate soldiers. And they were used to fire down on the Union gunboats and things that traveled the river. So I thought, okay, I'm used to hunting sites that other people have hunted heavily, so that doesn't stop me. I'm going to go in here and find some stuff. So I walk into the middle of the trenches and start hunting, and boom, I mean, like 2 or 3 swings, and I've got a mini ball, a drop mini ball. So I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be good. Right?
Yeah.
Mike, my next 100, and I mean, I counted them. My next 100 signals were fired 22 cartridges. How did I go into that nest of maybe 1,022 cartridges and pick a mini ball out of it on the first hit?
Yeah, that's amazing. It's just, why? How does that happen? You know, I just don't get it.
I don't either, you know, but I think hopefully at least with some of the folks when they go through these things and they've heard us talk about it, they'll understand that it's just part of what we call metal detecting.
Right. Doesn't have to be an explanation.
Yeah. And you know, I told you I had another silver coin story I want to tell you. This one was very interesting to me anyway. I hope it's interesting to you. You know, I am big on history, and I've written 5 books on Kentucky's pioneer and Civil War history. And one of the stories I wrote about was a tremendous battle near Fort Recovery, Ohio, in Darke County, that was called St. Clair's Defeat. General St. Clair, with 1,200 men, they were both a combination of regular U.S. Army soldiers and Kentucky militia. They would have been, you know, the guys wearing the coonskin caps, the Daniel Boone type guys. Mm-hmm. And anyway, they through some carelessness and poor planning on St. Clair's part, they got trapped right on the high ground just above the Wabash River bottoms, just outside the present city of Fort Recovery. They got surrounded by 3,000 warriors, mostly Shawnees and several other tribes. Shawnees were probably the principal tribe. And they were attacked just about at dawn. And then the snow had fallen the night before, and the camp was not prepared for defense. And to make a long story short, 800 of the 1,200 soldiers and militia were slaughtered. And there were 400 women that were called camp followers that did various chores, such as, you know, washing and pressing uniforms for the soldiers, and then other activities that we won't get into. 200 of the 400 of those women were slaughtered. And the remaining, the survivors, fled back to Fort Washington, which is now Fort Washington, set right about where the Cincinnati Reds ballpark is in downtown Cincinnati. And St. Clair did survive the battle, although he had about 6 horses shot out from under him. And he wasn't a coward, but he was a terrible planner and in my opinion, a terrible general overall. But anyway, this is considered to be, to this very day, the worst single defeat ever suffered by the United States Army.
Wow.
Yeah. See, now that's your reaction. Wow. And that was my reaction. Wow. You know, when I originally read the story, and I thought, I want to go find some musket balls from that battle. You know, I want to have some bragging rights to a few of the musket balls that were fired in that battle. And there's got to be a place where I can dig a few musket balls. So I plan my big trip, and I go to Fort Recovery and discover, to my chagrin, and I think is a good word, that they had built a city of Fort Recovery right slap dab in the middle of St. Clair's camp where the battle was fought. Well, I'm at a loss. You know, I'm driving up and down Main Street thinking, boy, I've driven a long way for nothing here. And suddenly I came to a little side street, and right on the corner, there was a freshly bulldozed lot where a building had been torn down. Turned out it was a church site. I never did find out how old the church was. But anyway, I'm thinking, oh, look at this, bare dirt right in the middle of the battlefield in downtown Fort Recovery. There's got to be some musket balls in there. So my whole mind, my whole psyche is focused on these historical artifacts that I want to find, fired musket balls from the battle. I knew that the Continental Army or the Colonial Army used a smaller caliber musket. The ball was about 44, 45 caliber, I believe. If there's any experts out there, they can correct me on that if I'm wrong. And the Indians, a lot of them were using the British, what's called the Brown Bess musket, and it fired a whopping big 74 caliber musket ball. And boy, I tell you what, they were not near as accurate long range as the U.S. Army's rifles, but boy, if one of those suckers hit you, it was like getting hit with a small cannonball. So I wanted to find at least one or two examples, of each. And that would have been my goal. So I got out there in this dirt and I started hunting. And the metal signals are the worst I have ever encountered anywhere on a building site. And I'm listening to bongity, 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 bong for 2 hours of hard hunting, and I have absolutely nothing to show for it. And I'm thinking about that long drive home with the miasma of defeat hanging over me. And I thought, no, I'm getting desperate. I've got to find at least one musket ball, and there's got to be one in all this dirt. So I decided to stay. And right away, I got a signal that was partially good, partially bad, mostly bad. And I thought, well, I'm not finding anything, but junk here. I'm going to go ahead and dig that signal. And lo and behold, I had a barber dime. Now, you understand, and this is the point about the silver. Today, or this day, silver is not on my mind. Lead musket balls. So I start digging. I hear more of these funny little signals, and I start digging, and every time I dig, I get a coin. And after that first 2 hours of zeroing out, the next 6 produced 50 coins and 5 musket balls, including a big Brown Bess 74 caliber. I had 50 coins, and 32 of them were silver. For me, it was a personal high on one side in one day. Wow. So I had my best day. Wow.
Yeah, that was a big one.
That was a big one. I had my best day for silver on a day that I didn't even want to find silver. I wasn't looking for silver. I'd have been I was glad. I got seeded coins. I got a little foreign coin that was it was even smaller than a half dime. It was silver. And I got religious medals, got 3 gold crosses and another gold religious medal and a couple silver. And, it was just an amazing day on a site that I thought was going to be a total waste of time. But that perseverance, of hanging in there and saying, I'm not going home defeated. And look what happened. And I hope that maybe some newer people that are getting into detecting will remember this, because they are sooner or later going to encounter almost exactly the same kind of circumstances.
Yeah.
So, I won't say that's necessarily Twilight Zone, but I thought it was rather remarkable how many times I went out looking for silver over the years. And one time when I really don't care about silver, I find it galore. Right. Did you ever have that happen, Mike?
Oh, I'm trying to think.
If you had a specific goal in mind, like you were.
No, not really. No, I can't. I've definitely, gotten into a place and think, oh, look at this place, it looks so good, and you're on private property, or it's probably never been hunted, and you go there and you just get skunked. And then I've turned right around and gone somewhere where I think, at least I'm getting out of the house, at least I'm getting some swinging in, and you go to this place and you just kill it. I've done that, but no, I can't say I've ever been somewhere where I wasn't expecting silver and ended up with a bunch. But I'm sure you've done that. You've looked at a place and you just think, it's not that, it's just a plain looking farmhouse, late 1800s, and the next thing you know, you're digging up relics left and right. Or I had a site like that. I had one that was kind of at a bad run of old farmhouses. I hadn't done good in a long time, and just was about ready to give up on them for a bit. The old farmhouse is still standing, and we got permission for this one, and just your regular old farmhouse, and go out there and just start killing. But right out of the truck, I got a 1820s large scent, which really predated the place. It had to have been built on an earlier site. I think there was a cabin there because there was a lot of iron and some really nice relics come out, and a lot of nice silver was coming up, and it was just one of them sites, it seemed like, boy, this one just keeps giving and giving and giving.
Yeah. There are just strange things that do happen, though. One of our river sites was a house site of a man named Obadiah Stout, and he was a colonel in the militia, as near as I've been able to discover. And apparently he had a militia training camp right there beside his house, right on the banks of the Ohio River. On the banks, but, right above the banks of the Ohio River in the field. And Buddy and I started hunting it back about 11 years ago. And, man, we started finding flat buttons. All kinds of flat buttons, every size, from little tiny ones to silver-plated ones the size of $50. Or at least, somewhere between $50 and $25. And we dug 450 between us. Flat buttons out of this militia camp. So my buddy moved out of the county, moved to another part of Kentucky, pretty far away, too far away for us to team up anymore out there. So I got a new hunting partner. This guy was a coin hunter, not a relic hunter. So I took him out here for the first hunt. Now, he had a lot of experience, and we ended up hunting a lot together. But in all of our 450 flat buttons we found, not one of them had any kind of insignia on it. Some of them had, writing on the back, but nothing on the front of the buttons. And I was amazed. I kept thinking, well, surely we're going to find, some buttons like the one you and I were talking about, with a cannon on it and a stack of cannonballs and stuff like that. Dug many of those kind of buttons out of old dump sites, fort sites, but not. We weren't getting any on this site. So my buddy Roger goes out there with me, and first thing he finds are two cast brass War of 1812 period eagle buttons. They're not like just, the general service eagle buttons of the Civil War. These are one-piece solid cast brass, and the eagle is very finely displayed on the surface, and the button's very round. And he gets two of these. He's the first person out of 450 buttons we dug, nothing. His first two buttons are two of these. Well, I thought, that is incredible beginner's luck, because this is like his first relic hunt. So I'm thinking, okay, I've seen this kind of beginner's luck before, So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't find another one. Maybe there's more of these in the camp. How we missed them, I don't know. He digs two more buttons, and one of them is a North Carolina Starburst Civil War button, and the other one is a Block I Confederate button. He digs 4 insignia buttons in a row in 4 different spots in this field, where we've taken 450 buttons out, and we didn't get a one of those.
Wow.
So, you see things, you see recoveries that defy all the odds.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, it happens for sure. Crazy things. I'm not going to tell it here tonight. Dorian, our listeners have heard it too many times, but, my button that I found, I told you about it earlier today, but something that surprised me that came out of that, I wasn't embarrassed to tell people, one-on-one that I had found, what had happened when I found that button. And it really surprised me how many other people they found something and they felt something or seen something because of it. You got to imagine, probably for for every person that'll talk about that, there's probably 10 or more that won't, that have had experiences that we'll never hear.
You're right about that. And that's one thing I found out about people that have had Bigfoot experiences. Most of them won't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Too embarrassed to be made fun of and stuff. And, I think people, other people have found, well, I know other people have, but I'd love to hear some more of the stories about finding a relic or coin or whatever and feeling like there's something attached to that. Like I said, I was really surprised at the few people that I did talk to that felt comfortable enough to share their story with me. And one was a good friend that saw a World War I doughboy in his kitchen. And while he was cleaning a World War I button he had just found.
Wow.
Yeah. And he actually was filming it, him cleaning the button, and he turned around to walk to the stove, and he glanced up. Unfortunately, he didn't pan up, but he jumped and he swore, and he had that original video, and he showed it to me. Now, he posted it on YouTube, but he edited that out of there. But the original video I got to see, and you don't see him look up. You're still seeing the camera pointed at the coin in his hand, or I'm sorry, the button in his hand. And all of a sudden the camera shakes violently as he jumps up, and, he like jumps in the air a little bit, and it shocked him. And, he said, well, that's what happened to me. Right here's the video. I didn't pan up, but you sure see my reaction. I didn't react like that for any reason. I deleted that out of there. I sure wasn't going to share that on YouTube, but, things like that happen. I think that there's a lot out there that we don't know about.
I had a fellow that worked for me. I did a lot of grounds maintenance on a big thoroughbred farm near Walton, Kentucky. And the fellow lived not too far from the farm on the same road. The road was an old road, and there had been Civil War skirmishing activities in the area. And he and his wife and 2 teenage daughters all told me that several times they had been sitting in their living room watching television, and a Confederate officer on a white horse brandishing a saber came riding down their hall and through the living room and went out the wall where the fireplace was. And they said, and all of them said they saw him and that they'd seen him several times. So you hear some really amazing stories.
Yeah, that's interesting. Bill's got a good one. He said the same thing happened to him one night, but it was the Pillsbury doughboy, and he stopped eating biscuits after that. So thought I'd throw that in there. I think everybody's susceptible to things. I don't know. I can't say I've had that many metal detecting experiences that really stick out to me that I thought, wow, what are the chances? I mean, I think we've all opened a hole before and found a marble or an arrowhead and stuff like that. I think that's kind of interesting. You're digging a aluminum pull tab or something, and then the hole's an old marble. Or I think I just don't know. I don't think I've had the experiences like you, Dorian.
Well, it's kind of interesting because unexpected things do happen. And it seems like I have been on the verge of greatness, that is, making discoveries that would have put me in the history books, just to have them snatched away at the last possible second by totally unexpected circumstances. Let me give you an example. During the siege of Vicksburg, Mississippi, out to the, let's see, I'm trying to remember how Vicksburg faces. I think it's out to the east. There's an area of bluffs that rise above the bottomland that is part of the Yazoo River bottom. And General Sherman and his army made an attack on, they tried to outflank the Confederates and get in behind them, the ones that were defending Vicksburg. But the place is called Chickasha Bluffs. And they had up there, they had a number of cannons, but they had one big brass cannon, and it had a name which I cannot for the life of remember. I'm going to have to go back to the ORs and find the reports of the incident. But anyway, this cannon was solid brass, and it fired big shells. It wasn't your typical little Civil War cannon. This was like a siege gun, what they call a siege gun. Not a mortar, but it was a cannon with a long barrel. Anyway, according to the history books, this cannon, while it was being used, exploded. And because it had a name and everything, it was kind of a famous cannon. There's others. You can look up one that's called the Swamp Angel. And there's another one called it was a mortar, big, huge mortar mounted on a rail car called the Dictator. It was used by the Federals, if you want to look at some of the cannons and how they named them. Anyway, whoever could find the remains of that cannon would make history because of its, particular part it played in the siege of Vicksburg. Well, I didn't look for this cannon. I'd read the story on it. Mainly because it happened up on Chickasha Bluffs, and that's where we were going to be hunting. Me and my partner had been invited by a local hunter who said he had permission on some property up there on the bluff. So we went up and we hunted, and we found a few minis here and there, and we kind of worked our way along the bluff. And I decided to go down over the bluff. It was a steep slope, but I thought, these guys could have thrown stuff off the bluff. There could be stuff on the sides here. And I got down about 10 or 12 feet below the top of the bluff, and I got a huge signal. And under the leaf mold and the sandy kind of mix of sand and clay dirt, about 4 or 5 inches, I struck solid metal, and I exposed enough of it to see it was solid brass. And I dug around one side and found the broken edge, and I had discovered this famous cannon. This is where it was on this slope, the pieces of it. So just at my moment of glory, our host yells out, "We got to go right now." I said, "We can't. I just discovered a cannon." He said, "I don't have permission to be on this property and it's patrolled, and there's somebody coming. If we don't go right now, we're going to be arrested." Can you believe that?
Yeah.
I hastily covered the hole, and I'm swinging my detector as we start down that slope as fast as we can go. And I hit 4 more big signals on the way down the slope, so I know all of it's there.
Mm.
And you talk about frustrating to get that close and then have to leave at the exact moment of discovery.
Right. Abandon it.
We weren't trying. I mean, I didn't know we were hunting illegally. I thought we were on this land where this guy had permission, but it turns out he had taken us off that land and onto the next piece where he didn't have permission. So,
wow.
Anyway, at least I have the satisfaction of knowing that the story about the exploded brass cannon is true.
That is amazing. I think we've all been there. You think you've got permission, somebody, yeah, I've got permission. I talked to the owner, this and that. And then you get into it and find out they don't have permission. And nothing makes me madder than that, because I'm the type of person, hey, if you don't have permission, I just don't want to go with you. Yeah, you do you. I'm not going to say anything. I'm that's not me. I can't enjoy myself. I don't think it's right. But, that's not a fun situation to be in. And people that lie about it, absolutely, it just makes me mad. Just, why would you do that? Don't invite me. I don't want to go to your place unless you got permission, and, it's crazy.
Absolutely. It's one thing if you want to take the risks, but you don't have the right to make anybody else take those risks unknowingly.
Yeah, exactly. I hate when that happens. And it's been a long time, because after it happened, well, I'll be honest with you, it didn't even happen. What happened once metal detecting, but it happened deer hunting when I was young. And my friend had permission for this site. And, okay, well, you're sure, right? I don't want to get in trouble. Yeah, we've got permission. Then it turned into run. And I thought, I never hunt. I wouldn't hunt with somebody like that again.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, if they get caught, if you all get caught, you're going to take the fall right along with them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So pick your partners well.
Right. Right.
Mike, what have you got in mind as far as what time are we going to wrap this up?
Whenever you're ready, once we've gotten everything out and we're good to go, I'm good.
Okay. Let me tell you about my Bigfoot experience.
Oh, let's hear that.
Okay. And I'll admit, before this happened, I had done some research and study, and I don't mean this in a braggadocio type way, but I've become a pretty good history detective, and I spot patterns and I spot clues. And I noticed that one of the common denominators in reports of people who had supposedly had contact with these creatures was that they smelled terrible, that it was a smell like nothing they'd ever really smelled before. It like a cross between, people tried to describe it as something that was rotten and something that was dead and something that was wild, like an animal smell. And you and I were talking earlier, down in the South in Florida and Louisiana, they call them skunk apes because of the smell. Well, I filed that away, and I had never had any. I've been in a lot of places. I've been in woods and swamps, and I've hunted 140 Civil War sites in 22 states. So I've seen a lot of different terrain. And a lot of terrain that would be really great for these creatures to live in, but I could not honestly say that I'd ever had any contact that I knew of. Never felt threatened, never heard any strange calls. But I'd read some of the reports about people who had and just kind of filed them away. Well, up in near Camden, Arkansas, a few miles out of town, is a Civil War battlefield called Poison Springs. And it involved a federal wagon train that had been out foraging for food for the army, the Union Army camped in Camden. And on their way back to Camden, when they got to Poison Springs, which was, oh man, my memory may be accurate or not accurate here. It seemed like it was like 17 miles out of Camden. they were ambushed by a major Confederate force that outnumbered them about 2-1. And they fought a pretty hard battle, but the Confederates captured the whole wagon train. And a lot of the soldiers fled. The Confederates came in from one side of the road that the wagon train was on. And so the Union guys fled into the woods on the other side of the road when the battle lines fell apart. And they got down into a big swamp. And the reports say that many of the survivors came into the camp at Camden. They had been bitten, some of them multiple times, by water moccasins and were all swollen up. That's actually in the official reports. So it's kind of an interesting battle, site. And I had ranged out in the direction that the Confederates had come in through the woods off of another road. And I ranged out in there looking for pockets of relics. And I was about a mile back into these deep woods. And the trees were fairly thick. Visibility wasn't a lot more than about 35, 40 feet in any direction because of how many trees there were. And there was dry leaf cover on the ground and no underbrush to speak of. And I had just gotten a signal, and I dug down, and it was a dropped Confederate infield bullet. So I actually, had gone a mile back in from where the hot part of the battle was fought. I was a mile away, and I just found a Confederate relic. So I'm thinking, okay, this is great. So I'm down on one knee. And I'm not armed. I have about a 12-inch Bowie knife with me that I always carry when I'm relic hunting, and that was the only thing I had in the way of a weapon, if you don't count my little army shovel that I dug with. So I'm down on my knees, and suddenly I realized that the normal forest sounds that you take for granted had stopped. Birds singing, whatever. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. It was just dead quiet. And I'm there on one knee, looking around me, and suddenly this horrendous odor hit my nose. And compared to a skunk, I'd say the skunk's the better odor. It was like nothing I'd ever smelled, and it fit the description that I'd read. It was like a cross between something wild, some animal smell, and something that was dead. And I thought, Bigfoot? And I look around and I can't see anything. But again, visibility was limited. And I thought, man, what do I do? I'm back here a mile away from, my hunting buddies, probably somewhere up by the road a mile away. And I'm thinking, well, first thing is don't show fear and act normal. Maybe it's just curious. So, I cleaned the dirt off my mini bow and put it in my pouch and trying to act normal, not feeling normal. And then I hear something shuffling through the leaves, and it's walking away from me. And I just stay right where I am until the sound fades completely away as it gets farther away from me. Because I didn't want to seek a confrontation if it was something like a Bigfoot.
Yeah, that wouldn't be any good, would it?
I'll tell you what, though, that was either a Bigfoot or the worst smelling hillbilly in the state of Arkansas.
Which it could have been. It could have been.
Could be, but sure sounded like somebody about as big as Mike Haer that was shuffling through those leaves.
Big guy, huh?
Big guy.
I don't know. It's kind of amazing to me when you're out in the woods how loud a squirrel can be. So I don't know. The smell, though, case,
when the sound had left me, I always carry a roll of bright red or pink surveyor's tape, and I tied a a big piece to the closest tree, and I began to work a circle, like a spiral, getting farther and farther away from the tree with the ribbon. And I found the path where it shuffled through the leaves. The ground was too dry and hard to get any distinct footprints, but it was obviously that something that walked on two legs had left a trail, and it was headed towards this big swamp, this same swamp that the soldiers had gotten snake bit in and everything. And I decided, I wasn't about to follow it by myself. So when we got back, I was staying with a fellow named Townsend Mosley, and I'm sorry that Townsend recently passed on. He was a great relic hunter and a great promoter of Civil War history in the state of Arkansas. He was a very quiet man, straight as an arrow, not given to exaggerations or lies, and a good friend. And that day I was hunting with his father, who was in his 80s, was almost 87, I think. And, his father's quite a story. His father had he worked as administrator in a local hospital in Camden, and he had a massive heart attack. They didn't expect him to survive, and he did. At 78 is when he took up relic hunting. And at 87, he was walking my legs off out there in those woods.
That's funny. That's great.
He lived into his middle 90s before he died, and I'm convinced that getting into the relic hunting saved his life. I mean, extended his life quite a few years. So anyway, I was staying at Townsend's house, and after we all had dinner together that night, Townie and I went out. We called him Townie. We went out on the back deck, and I said, Townie, I think I had a Bigfoot experience today. And he looked at me, and he looked very uneasy. And I told him what had happened. I said, now, you lived in this area a long time, and there's millions of acres of timber company land around Camden and Poison Springs and all that area that's bisected with really good gravel roads that the timber companies built for the logging trucks. But you can get out on those roads, and you could park in the middle of it and sit in a chair all day and never see another vehicle. There's just, there's so many miles and miles of miles and miles, and there's not any traffic except for an occasional logging truck, really, or a company, official. But anyway, I asked him if he'd ever had any Bigfoot experiences, and he looked down at the ground and kind of shuffled his toe, scuffed his toe against the boards on the deck, and he looked really uneasy, and he said, in a low voice to me, he said, well, we don't like to talk about those things around here.
Huh.
And I said, well, could you make an exception just this one time? And I said, I won't tell anybody, Of course, now that he's dead, I guess it doesn't matter. But I kept my promise. I never told connected the story to him until now. This is the first time. Townie said that he used to raise hunting dogs, and he and his wife would take the dogs and put them in the back of a big station wagon, and they would drive out into this millions of acres of timber company land, and park on one of those gravel roads, and he'd open the back tailgate, and the dogs would jump out, and they'd run into the woods and chase deer, and he could hear them bugling in the woods, chasing the deer, and after they got their exercise and were happy, they would come back to the car and get back in. So one day they just finished up and loaded up the dogs, and it was just about dark. And he said they started down, the road curved down into a gully where it crossed a creek and went up the other side. And they were coming around a big turn that kind of bent to the left. And right in the middle of the turn, Townie said there was an 8-foot tall, hairy creature standing in the road. And it froze in the headlights and just looked at them. And they were so shocked, they just sat there looking at it. And he said suddenly it took off running, and there was almost an 8-foot vertical bank on the other side of the road. And he said it jumped up on top of that bank from the flat part of the road with no effort at all and disappeared into the woods.
Oh, that's incredible.
And I'll always believe that he told me the absolute truth because, he was just not, he was really reluctant. I had to really drag this out of him. Mm-hmm. I believe that there's definitely definitely enough smoke to believe there's a little fire behind, the legends of Bigfoot.
Yeah, I've often wondered. I'm a pretty open-minded person, and I can't say I've ever experienced anything, but I've wondered about certain things. I got a quick one, and it's not metal detector related, so I'm going to make it real quick. And I think I've told it before on the show, but Dorian, I don't think I've ever told you this. Working on a guy's roof, he was retired from Wright Pat, and he was real high up. I don't remember what he was, but he was high. I want to say he was a general, but I'm not 100% positive. And my brother was redoing his roof, and I'd go out on the weekends and help him. It was a huge house, lot of work. And on the last day, every Saturday we'd get off the roof. I think it was 2 Saturdays in a row, and then the job was done. And he'd grab us each a beer and maybe a 6-pack, and the 3 of us would drink 1 or 2 beers and talk. And my brother's very interested in history, military history and stuff. And so we'd talk a little bit about that, and then we'd go home for the day. Well, that Saturday, we're sitting there talking, and my brother just, he'd retired out of Wright Pat, and my brother just not even with more of a smirk on his face, he said, "So are there little green aliens out there?" And this guy, without breaking a smile or anything, said yes. And I will never forget that. We were both in shock. And if I remember right, that was the last day. He might have had to go out the next day and finish up. That was the last day I was out there. But, I don't think we would have thought about it for months. But why we didn't ask him more questions, I'll never know, other than we were just in shock. But, I could have a million questions for him now and just never gave it a thought. But, yeah, I thought that was interesting. It kind of goes along with your whole thing about, reluctant. Well, this guy wasn't reluctant, but why we didn't ask further, I don't know. Just, I think shock.
Yeah, that sounds like a missed opportunity for sure. I ran into an old fella at Lowe's the other day. I say the other day, about 3 weeks ago, and he was World War II veteran. I think he was waiting on his wife or something, and we ended up in a conversation, and he told me that he worked at Wright Pat. I forget what he said he did out there. And I said, so did you ever get to go inside Hangar 18? He says, oh, yes. And I said, well, it's not there anymore. They tore it down. He says, it's not what's above the ground that counts. He says, it's what's below the ground there. I said, so are the stories true? Did they keep alien bodies there? And the guy was as serious as a heart attack. He looked at me and he said, well, he says, I don't know what the situation there is now, he said, but when I was there last, he said they had 17 bodies.
Wow. Creepy. Now, that hangar, when did they tear that down?
I can't give you an exact date, Mike. It's been many, many years now. Remember Project Blue Book? Have you ever, I don't know if you remember, but have you ever read about it?
Yeah. Well, hold on real quick about the hangar. Was it there 20 years ago?
I don't think so. Project Blue Book was the government's official response to investigating the UFO phenomena, and that was back in the 50s and 60s. And a lot of stuff leaked out about Hangar 18, and I think it was torn down in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the reason I ask is because I knew somebody who worked on planes. Worked on planes and equipment for them that would go into the museum, and the hangar that they did that in, he said, was the hangar where they took where they supposedly took the stuff from Roswell, and he said, I find it funny that you'll watch movies on it or documentaries, and they'll show the hangar, and he said now all it is stuff that goes into that's getting worked on for the Air Force Museum, because he had been in it. But I don't know if he had that information right or not. I don't know. But interesting. But we're off the subject now, getting into aliens and stuff.
Okay.
But you ready to call it a night, Dorian, or do you got any more stories?
It go either way. I've got one more, or you can.
Well, let's do it. No, let's do it. If you got another one, let's hear it.
Okay. Back in the 80s, say the early first half of the 80s, don't remember exact date on this one. I'd made a trip up from Dallas, Texas, where I was living, to a little town called Savage, Maryland, very near Washington, D.C. And I was helping a friend with an advertising project. And because I'd had a lot of experience, designing ads and placing ads for Garrett when I worked there as their marketing director. And I'd gone out to get some artist supplies for some newspaper ads he wanted to do. And on the way back, I was on U.S. Route 1, and I came to the intersection of Annapolis Junction Road. If you turned to the right and went down there several miles, you would come to the Annapolis Naval Academy. Well, right on that corner on my right had been a section of woods, no structures built on it. Seemed like I recall there was a convenience store across the street from it. But they'd laid a pipeline and they'd cut this patch of woods in half. They had, imagine you got a cube or a square and you draw a line from one corner to the other corner, and you divided the square into two pyramids.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of what they'd done here. That line that makes the two pyramids would be the pipeline. And there was a big section of raw dirt running at a diagonal, a line, a 45-degree angle, all the way across this patch of woods from US 1 to Annapolis Junction Road. And it was about 40 feet wide. And I thought, well, this looks interesting, because I was kind of hoping to find a Civil War site to hunt while I was up in that area. So I parked my car at the convenience store, walked across the road, and walked out in the dirt. And I started seeing square nails, pieces of old broken glass, bottles and plates and things. And I thought, oh, yeah, this is going to be good. So I went back to the house where I was staying with my friend to get my metal detector and came back. Well, got out there amongst all that broken plates and glass and square nails and couldn't find a single non-ferrous target. Not a one. Not a mini ball, not a coin, nothing. And I thought, man, this much visible debris and nothing. Well, I noticed. Pardon?
I was going to say, that doesn't make sense.
Well, I noticed on one side of the cut, they had left it about the top of the dirt was about 3 feet down from the original grade, and they had cut right next to a huge oak tree that must have been 4.5 feet in diameter. And I could actually see back under the roots. So I went over there and stuck my detector back under the roots, a couple of feet against the clay bank, and immediately got a coin signal and dug an Indian head penny dated 1865. Well, hey, this looks promising. So there weren't any other coins under the tree, so I decided to go into the woods on the other side of this big tree. And I started hitting coins right and left, just like that. I had never dug a 2-cent piece. I got 3 of them that day. I got my first 3-cent nickel. I got my first shield nickel. I forget how many first, and I got an 1877 key date Indian head in beautiful condition.
Wow.
And I started finding some interesting things. I found a gold-plated brass wedding ring. Now, a lot of the Civil War soldiers would not wear their original wedding rings to war because they were afraid that if they were killed, somebody would rob the body, take it off their finger. So they would leave their wedding ring with their wives, and then they would buy a gold-plated brass ring, very cheap, from the settlers that followed the army, from the merchants that followed the armies. Well, here I had one of those, and I had coins, and then I find a finely enameled and three-colored cufflink, women's cufflink. And then I start finding sewing things like a pair of scissors, thimbles, a little thing you make buttonholes with. And I found 2 fired Confederate mini balls. And I thought, what kind of a site do I have here? This is not a typical Army camp. We're only a couple miles away from Annapolis, so there were a lot of federal troops camped around here. But this doesn't have, the pattern of finds doesn't support a federal camp. Couple of eagle buttons. And then I remembered my history, and General Jubal Early and his men rode a raid all around Washington. And it turned out that Annapolis Junction Road was the road that they rode down.
Oh, interesting.
So they saw tents in the woods and fired off a few shots as they went by. And that's where my fired Confederate mini balls came from. But this camp was a mystery, and I had to think on it. And the brass wedding ring turned out to be the key. What I had found was a camp where the ladies that serviced the soldiers set up shop.
Oh.
They did washing and mending for them and other more interesting services. And some soldier, feeling guilty, had taken his gold-plated brass wedding ring off and put it in his pants pocket, and quite frankly, probably lost it and some of his coins when he dropped his drawers.
Oh, that's funny. That is too funny.
And that was the only time in all of the hundreds and hundreds of experiences of relic hunting that I ever found such a camp.
Wow. That is
so
interesting.
I won't say that was Twilight Zone, but it was a very interesting thing. And I came away to see, here was another thing. And, people say, well, you're a relic hunter, I'm a coin hunter. And I'll tell you that I probably got a lot better old coin finds as a relic hunter than a lot of coin hunters do. Mm-hmm. Because the sites that I hunt produce old coins. Just like this one here. I got the 3 2-cent pieces, and they were in almost an uncirculated condition. So my buddy had never metal detected. So I went and got him and brought him back, and I had an extra detector. And he only found one coin. And I could hardly believe what he found. He found a counterfeit $1 gold piece.
Oh, wow.
It was gold. It was gold-plated pewter is what it was.
Huh. That's incredible.
Yeah, that was it. That was his very first coin find, So you never know. But like I said, a lot of strange things happen over the years. And you just walk away from some of them saying, well, I'm probably never going to really know what was going on here.
Right.
But
you just never know.
It just serves to keep this activity, I'll tell you, alive and fresh, Yeah. I haven't lost, 48 years, and, the body's lost a little bit of its enthusiasm for what I do with it, but I haven't lost my enthusiasm for hunting with a metal detector, any kind of treasure, historical relics, old coins, anything like that. The thrill, the anticipation has never gone away. So it is truly an activity, if you want to call it a hobby, fine, but it is truly one that can last you your entire life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's incredible. Oh, I'm getting bad feedback again. We got to get you some headphones, Dorian.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's one of those things that's hanging fire, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll get it. I'm sorry, I don't know what that noise is, but it's been driving me crazy most of the night. There's like a rattle somewhere. It's really thrown me. It's really thrown me tonight with what's going on. I'm not sure. When we get off of here, I'll track it down and figure out what's going on. But yeah, if any of you got stories or anything, let us know. We'd love to hear them. Even we could talk about it on a future show or something. I just, I know. I just can't say I've had many things happen, but and I've forgot so many over the years. I know I've heard some stories, and it's just like I'm drawing a blank today. And I guarantee we'll do this show, and within the next couple of days, stuff will start coming to me that I've at least heard.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that, and same thing with me. I probably, I wrote down 7 incidents here that we've talked about tonight, and I'm sure that if I think about it the next couple of days, I could probably do twice that many more.
Right. Absolutely. I'll tell you one that kind of always got me similar. I guess it kind of fits in the range. I'll tell you real quick. I took what was it? A mine lab down for my brother to use one day. He'd never used that detector. What was it? It wasn't an Explorer. It wasn't E-Track. It was it was never real popular, but it was like a dummy down E-Track. The Safari. I had a Safari, and I took it to let him use it, and I get out of the truck, and we get out, and I show him how to set it up, and here, let me set it up for you, and here's have fun. And he takes off swinging, and I mean, I think it's his first swing. It might have been his second or third. And he starts digging, and I'm watching him as I'm still getting ready. I don't even have my detector ready yet and stuff. And finally I get it done. He goes, and I walk over that side of the truck, and he goes, I can't pinpoint it there. I'm having trouble. Can you help me with this? And so I did. What he had done, he was pinpointing dead center of 2 different targets. And he said, do you think that's a good target? I said, one of them is. And he dug a barber half. And now, how many times have you been out with somebody new? We hear those stories. That one guy over in England, and I don't even remember what horde it was. He had just bought like an Ace 150 or something, and went out and found a horde. Was new to the hobby, and it happens. You hear those crazy stories, but yeah, he dug a $50 right outside of the truck, and I'm still getting my stuff ready. And that was an odd one to me. Of course, when it's your brother, you want to whack him over the head with your shovel and take it from him, but you don't. You don't.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Can I throw in one more? I just thought of really.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
This won't take long.
Oh, that's okay.
One day while I was working at Garrett, my secretary came in and said, "You've got a friend out here in the lobby who wants to see you." Well, this guy's name was Dean, and I'll leave his last name out for reasons which will become clear. But Dean was a freight pilot. He flew, freight all over the United States. And he'd flown into Dallas, and his plane had to have some mechanical work, so he had a little free time. And he said, "Why don't you take me to your favorite silver park?" Okay. So I'll even tell you where anybody that you're in Texas, Mike, and there's probably some other Texas people listening. That was Turtle Creek Park in Dallas.
Okay.
Old park, has a creek, flows down the middle. Long park, kind of narrow and thin. And it was always good to me on coins. So I took him down to an area that I like to hunt. And we were getting ready to start hunting. And he says, he says, I would really like to find a 16D mercury dime.
Oh, jerk.
And I said, I'm being kind of a smart aleck, and I say, well, Dean, you know what? I might just get busy and dig one here in a minute. And he says, yeah, right, So we start swinging, and it couldn't have been more than a couple of minutes, and I got a signal, a good signal. And it was a 16D mercury dime. It looks like about in extra fine condition.
Wow.
I had never dug one in my life. And I make some smart aleck remark, and 2 minutes later I dig one.
Oh, how nice is that?
Yeah, I guess that one belongs in the Twilight Zone show, doesn't it?
For sure. Yeah, that one sure does. You're not kidding. That is crazy. I've heard of people doing that. Matter of fact, somebody just told me a story about that recently. They were saying, boy, I'd sure like to dig this, and sure could be, he did. Yeah.
That's strange. The sad thing was I lost a friend over it, and we dug about 20, 30 coins apiece before we quit. It was in the evening. And I had taken my coins and I just piled them on the rubber mat, right below where my feet rested, when I'm driving the truck. Mm. And we got back to the I forget, I had to get out and go in the store and get something or whatever. Didn't think about it, and I put the 16D mercury in there with the rest of the coins. Well, we got back to the factory and, said goodbye, and Dean took off in his car. And then I went to pick up my coins, and I realized that 16D mercury wasn't there.
Oh.
And that's why I didn't tell you his last name. It was kind of funny because he was a former deputy sheriff.
Wow.
But it hurt him so bad, he stole my 16D, and I lost him as a friend. That was sad.
Yeah, it is. That's a shame. That is a shame. Yeah, I've heard of other people doing that, joking about, I'm going to find one of these, or, I've never found one of these, sitting there talking to your buddy, and, somebody just told me a real good story about that, and I don't recall who it was now, but it was like that. I've never found one of these. Yeah, me neither. I'd sure like to find one today, and the next hole is one of those. I think that's funny.
Yeah, and like I said, those stories belong in the Twilight Zone. They sure do. The odds are so astronomical that would happen,
Yeah, that is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Well, Dorian, let's wrap it up for the night. Bill's saying he had a digging partner steal an old silver ring out of his pouch. Yeah, that's a shame. I just can't imagine. Yeah, I don't get that. I'm never going to be hunting with somebody that they find something so good I'm tempted to steal it. It's just I can't even believe people would do that. It shocks me that I hear stories like that. Like, how could you do something like that? Let's wrap it up. Dorian, I think it's been good. We got a storm rolling in now. It is getting really windy here. I don't think you can hear it yet, but I'm looking out, and it is our wind is picking up. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, we've calmed down this end. We're just getting a slow, steady rain, and which is what it's for normal weather anymore around here.
Yeah. Well, it'll clear up before you know it, and it'll be nice and dry. You're probably going to end up in a drought before long. You know that, right?
Well, that would be a real change. I'll say that because we have had like 5 or 6 wet years in a row, and it's driving the farmers crazy. I heard the other day that only 68% of the farmers in Ohio got their crops in, Mike.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've heard some people say there's some bare fields up there, different parts of Ohio. I've heard that it was a real bad year. Indiana, the same way. Indiana really struggling. So wish them all luck. Hope they recover from it good, because I know that's not easy.
Well, We'll know whether they did or not when we see what the fall food prices are, won't we?
Yeah, we will. Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Well,
good night. Good night, Dorian. Thanks for, I sure like you coming on board, and I'm looking forward to some really good shows ahead.
Well, I hope the audience really enjoyed some of that. And by the way, Mike, we ought to think about doing a show about experiences of taking someone out for their first rally hunt, because time and time again I have done this, and it is amazing. There must be something called beginner's luck.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to do that. I'll go ahead and tell the listeners now. Dorian and I are working on. We're going to do a series. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we're going to get real detailed on detecting for beginners. We're going to do, I think what we're going to do, Dorian and I have discussed it, and we're going to try to have 1 or 2 guests a month. And then we're going to have subjects we talk about. And I think it'll be, Dorian and I will discuss it further, but we'll probably do 1 a month on detecting for beginners, and we'll kind of start and go detailed with different subjects. I think. I don't know. Well, Dorian and I will figure it out and let everybody know. But I think it's a good topic. We don't want to do it all the time. Most of our listeners are detectorists, but I think it'd be a good thing, and it might remind some of you of some things. I know when I've written articles in the past on it and stuff, as I'm thinking of things to talk about in the article and make sure I get it all, it'll remind me of stuff. Have you found that, Dorian?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also found that even long-time detectors sometimes will be missing just one of the basic pieces of information that a beginner should know, and it's hampering their success. It's not that they're not finding anything. It's just that they could do a lot better if they realized that they were leaving out a basic thing. I'll give you an example. Guy's a great hunter, but he lost track of the fact that if you swing your detector with your elbow bent, you can get a crippling type of pain in there similar to rheumatism or arthritis. We call it detector elbow. Mm-hmm. So one of the things, that it's just a basic thing. When you swing your detector, make sure you're not swinging with your elbow bent.
Right.
You might get away with it in your 20s, but the bill's going to come due on down the road.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
But this guy, this is what he got to the point. He was having to cut down on his metal detecting because his arm was hurting him so bad. He was a great hunter, but that one little not being aware of a basic fact about how to detect and stay, keep that arm healthy, because your swinging arm is awfully important to metal detecting.
Yeah, it is. There's two that I've seen over and over and over again, even with experienced people, that really surprised me. Well, there's more than one. You know what? Let's leave it there, Dorian. We could get into a whole new subject, and we could be on all night. But that'll be coming up. We're going to start that series. We're going to get some really good guests coming on, and we'll come up with some other topics and stuff to discuss. So thank you all for tuning in, and Dorian, again, thank you. Don't forget our friends of the All Metal Mode podcast. We dig the Civil War headquarters. Obviously, that's Dorian's. Love that place. Love that group. Zero Discrimination on Facebook, and of course her YouTube channel, Girls Rock Metal Detecting. Same thing. She's got a Facebook group and channel. Ohio Relic Hunting. That's our good friend Bill Marsh. Love that group, and Dirt Pirates Detecting. So check them out, and I hope everybody has a good night. Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.